geometry effectively and retain their power, stuff like that.
There you go. Yeah, like an obsidian sky ring like John Dee and the guys had back when,
That's right, and that was very big in Mexico too, and in Peru, many of these societies where you're looking into obsidian mirrors, same like crystal balls, other unusual things like this, and crystals have this power. I mean, you can see why quartz crystal is used. And the early chapters in our book, The Crystal Skulls, we go into that, how amazing and high-tech quartz crystals are. They're used today in all kinds of high-tech things, from watches, atomic clocks. Even NASA goes into space and tries to grow crystals in space so that they'll have pure quartz crystals.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's the idea with Eugene Bobon, and that some of these crystal skulls are made in Germany, that the Maximilian and these French, Austrian emperors, and we don't know why exactly, but they perhaps commissioned these life-size, very pure, they're perfect, in a sense, crystal skulls. And they were made in Germany. And we don't know how many were made. The Smithsonian has identified 4 or 5, and perhaps more, although it seems like they're sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as we say, where they found a few, what they believe are modern crystal skulls, and they're sort of like saying, well, this is the answer to the whole mystery. I would say that's wrong.
Yeah.
But so some of these crystal skulls, including the British Museum one, probably the Mitchell Hedges one too, were made in Germany, then taken to Mexico. And rather than originally being some kind of fakes that were then going to be resold to museums, apparently they were the property of these high officials who now were, in many cases, French or Austrian. They were European transplants who had come to Mexico, try to create a new empire in a rather chaotic country too.
Yeah.
And so now you have these high officials with a mixture, I would say, of authentic Aztec, Mixtec, Zapotec crystal skulls. Many of these may have been really quite small, not life-size, but now you could add to their collection of genuinely old crystal skulls some of these newer ones. And the newer ones were larger, probably made out of Brazilian crystal that had been then sent to Germany, turned into a crystal skull. Even with modern type saws and machining, would still take many, many months to create these crystal skulls, but not hundreds of years. And this is one of the things, too, when guys like Frank Dorland in the late 1960s, he studied in San Francisco the Mitchell Hedges skull. He believed that the Mitchell Hedges skull was really found in Lubanton, this lost city in Belize.
Mm-hmm.
He thought that somehow the Mayans really had made it. He could not find modern tool marks, although apparently on one of the teeth of the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, there are some scratches that appear to be from a power tool. So he thought, but he genuinely thought that the Mayans had somehow made this. But he assumed, of course, then too, that they had to use relatively primitive tools to do this. And so he had then calculated that it would have taken 200 or 300 years to make this thing slowly, polishing it with sand and a leather rag, trying to make it smooth. I mean, it's mind-boggling, the effort that they would have allegedly had to make.
Right.
So now you have, it incorporates, I think, all of these studies where, yes, there are genuine ancient crystal skulls. They're real. We don't really know how they carved those. They're in museums now in Mexico and Guatemala and other areas. Then you have some of these German-made ones. They're the ones that are the more famous ones because they're very large.
Mm-hmm.
And they're almost exactly the size of a human skull. The Mitchell Hedges one has this movable jawbone beneath it. One of the other things in the Mitchell Hedges skull that's unusual is that it has drilled holes in the base of the skull. And those holes would then apparently have had some kind of wooden or metal rods inserted into the base of the skull. And that skull, I mean, it's quite a unique skull, and it's bizarre ultimately.
Right.
That skull could have sat on some altar, could have been lit from below. I mean, that skull had special light wells and what they call light pipes built into it that would channel the light and make it come out the eyes. It was specially made that it glowed and had a certain kind of occult presence to it and an aura. If you saw it, and the eyes would be glowing at you, and then on top of that, with these rods in the base of the skull inserted, you could manipulate the skull. And for instance, say a priest could be underneath the altar, underneath the floor of some temple, manipulating these rods. And what would happen is the skull would appear to be talking to you.
Right, right.
And get this, as some kind of special priesthood fraud, in a sense, you might have a temple, perhaps a Mayan temple or Aztec temple or something. The priests bring a person one at a time into the interior of this temple. The priest stands there. You are looking at this crystal skull on top of an altar. It's lit up and glowing. The eyes are glowing at you. It's life-size. You're quite amazed at this. And then it starts talking to you.
Right.
And the mouth is moving, and it's, in theory, the skull can't really say anything. But, say, a priest underneath who's manipulating it, he starts talking, and he becomes the voice of the skull.
Right, right. You know,
so you are, as some, just uninformed peasant who's been brought into this temple, you're totally blown away. I mean, you cannot believe it, what you're seeing, but it's right there in front of you.
Right, right.
And here is a talking human head. It's all lit up and glowing. Its mouth is moving.
Yeah.
And, words are coming out of it. And, I mean, you are really genuinely impressed and probably frightened. Who knows what the crystal skull might tell you at that point.
Right.
One thing it might tell you is to give lots of money to the priests, as you leave the temple, something like that.
There you go. Perfect for creating a new religion or something right there.
Well, right. And the crystal skulls, particularly the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, is perfectly made for something like that.
Yeah,
and in fact, I mean, as they studied it, that's one of the main things they noticed was that, this thing was made to talk. But now here's the other thing, and as we get into the technology here, for these two holes at the base of the skull to have been made, I mean, they are just, like a barely a centimeter in diameter or something, less, and they go 4 or 5 centimeters up into the base of the skull, and they're perfectly round holes to slip some kind of wooden or steel rod. To make that into a crystal skull, to drill a hole like that, you would basically need some kind of power tool. I mean, it almost couldn't be done otherwise.
Right, right.
Frank Dorland, who studied the Mitchell Hedges skull in the 60s in San Francisco, I mean, he was aware of all this, and he of course knew about these holes at the base of the skull, but how they could have made those, he was unable to figure out. And I mean, that's why I was saying it took them hundreds of years. But if you have diamond-tipped drills and things, I mean, then it all becomes quite plausible. And certainly they had those in Germany. But I mean, once again, did the Zapotecs, the Olmecs, did they have this kind of a thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a curious thing too when you look at crystal skulls in Mexico, and you go back to the Himalayas and to Tibet. These tantric yogis who live in the Himalayas. So we're talking now northern India and Tibet. These guys, their skulls and crystal skulls were a big thing there. They are real.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's one of the things about crystal skulls, is that crystal skulls are absolutely real. I mean, they exist. It's when they were made and how they were made is the question.
Indeed.
But you do have these ones in Tibet and India. Now, there's a strong connection, really, between ancient India and Tibet and Mexico and the Americas. Many archaeologists, of course, don't think that. They are isolationists. They believe that ancient civilizations are all isolated from each other.
Right.
There's not some transoceanic traffic. But I show in my book on Mystery of the Olmecs that a lot of what was going on in ancient Mexico was a trans-Pacific trade that was coming, in fact, from ancient India and Southeast Asia across the Pacific. They were using Tonga, Easter Island, Tahiti, and then landing in Mexico, also in Peru.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's quite possible that ultimately the whole crystal skull mania that's popularly associated with Mexico ultimately is coming from ancient India and Tibet and the Himalayas. How about that?
Right. Well, that's very interesting, and again, that supports the idea, and I'm all in favor for that general idea of a global seafaring people that basically was around the planet at that time. I just want to squeeze in here, David, and ask you about your comment on this. That if we return and talk about the kind of occult aspect to this, if you will. The subtitle, of course, of your book is Astonishing Portals to Man's Past, and that's an interesting use of a word there, because if we talk about portals or even transport, quartz crystal, of course, is obviously a medium for communication, because if we just think back of the first radio receivers, we had quartz crystal in those. So it's obvious.
That's right, and there's the crystal radio sets you can use where you don't even need batteries and things.
That's right.
But you need a quartz crystal. Quartz crystals are very high tech. I mean, they were known in ancient times. Ancient people did use quartz crystals, and even just a normal crystal, one that's not carved, was often part of a shaman's bag of tricks, the medicine man. If you go to many museums in the Americas, in South America, in Mexico, even in the United States, they will show you quartz crystals as part of what they find. Magic mushrooms are part of this too.
Indeed.
Jade artifacts, the quetzal feathers. These people also use boomerangs and other kind of unusual weapons and things like that.
Yeah.
So you start to see a trace there. But crystals are really important. You can, like a CD or a DVD, you can store information in them.
There we go.
And then use lasers and things like that. It's one of the things they say about crystal skulls and any crystal object is that over time it will take on certain energies and vibrations of the people around it. And like a DVD or something, it stores information, and that information can later be accessed by other people if they do it right.
Well, exactly, and that opens up the a can of worms, so to speak. And I guess we don't have time to go into all of that in this segment here, because we need to begin to round things off. But just to squeeze this in here, that this could potentially, and I've heard this before, that the crystal skulls, or some of them, that